Consider the following quote written by Ellen White, February 26, 1914. 1914, a little more, a year and a couple months before her death. It's in Review and Herald, February 26, 1914. Had Israel taken the messages of the prophets emphasizing the value of the great things of God's law, they would have been spared the humiliation that followed. It was because they persisted in turning aside from the law that God was compelled to allow their enemies to take them captive. Pause. What law? Imposed rules or God's design laws of love that he revealed through all of his prophets. Remember, over and over again, the prophetic message of justice is helping the needy, loving the enemy, being kind to the stranger, etc., etc. This is the justice over and over again through the prophets.
The language that God was compelled to allow the enemies to take. I mean, he didn't want to.
Yes.
He was trying to restrain every energy.
He was compelled, and he was compelled by design law, by reality. And we're going to unpack that here in the next paragraph or so. It says, my people, now quoting Hosea, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, was the message to them through Hosea. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will reject you, seeing you have forgotten the law of God. What knowledge have they rejected? Creator worship, whose law is design law, truth, love, freedom, and preferred pagan gods who make up rules and require appeasement. They forgot reality. Keep going. In trial and affliction, they were to learn lessons that under circumstances more favorable they had refused to learn. This is the compelling part right here. It's the design law. Think this through. I'll give you a simple example. If you have a child who refuses to learn in the favorable circumstance of instructions, verbal instructions, favorable, not to touch a hot stove, they will learn eventually through the unfavorable circumstances of touching, the trial of touching, and the affliction of getting burned. They will learn through trial and affliction. The trial of actually touching. I tried it out. I tried it. It's a trial. I tried it. They will learn through trial and affliction if you don't learn through the favorable. This is not something God, okay, you didn't pay me? I'm going to get you now. This is a reality. This is design law. I instructed you. I led you. I protected you. I taught you. You still wanted to go that direction. Okay. If you insist on touching the hot stove, then you will have through your trial the affliction of what it brings. You're trying it out. Next. In every age, transgression of God's law has been accompanied by the same result. What's the result of transgressing God? Legal trouble with inflicted punishment? No. In every you violate the laws of health in every age, you get health consequences. This is what it means. The days of Noah, when every precept of the law was set aside, iniquity became so deep and widespread that God could no longer bear with it. Why? Because God lost patience? He really isn't infinite in love and infinite in mercy and infinite in grace. His cup of patience filled up and he couldn't take any more. I just can't take it anymore. Or he could no longer bear with it because to bear any longer than he did would have been the loss of Noah, the last family on earth who would work with him, and the destruction of the avenue through which Messiah was coming. And he loses the whole race. He bore with it as long as reality would allow him to bear with it before he needed to act in order to keep open avenue for Messiah. It's reality-based. This is our God, the God of reality. In the time of Abraham, the people of Sodom openly defied God and his law, and there followed the same wickedness, the same corruption, the same unbridled indulgence that had marked the antediluvian world. The time preceding the downfall of the northern kingdom was one of similar disobedience and of similar wickedness. What happens when people reject the Creator God and design law? What happens? Understand why it happens. It's unavoidable. They become corrupt. They become selfish. They become governed by fear, survival instincts, exploiting of others, taking advantage, destroying, hurting, blaming, lying, cheating, manipulating, controlling, advancing through power and might. The constant warfare. It's unavoidable. God's law was counted as a thing of naught, and this opened the floodgates of iniquity upon Israel. What would happen in a society today if it was actively taught? There's no such things as laws of health. You can eat whatever you want. You never have to exercise. You can smoke, drink, take whatever drugs. It has no negative consequence on you, whatever. And people believed it and did it. If they threw off the laws of health and did whatever they want anytime they wanted, wait, we live in that society, don't we?
Yeah, it's already happened. It's been done.
And what happens? What's happening? Unbridled sickness, disability, corruption of character, minds, floodgate of health problems. Continue on with the quote. And as it was then, so it is today. As it was then, so it is today. Men boast of the wonderful progress and enlightenment of the age, but God sees the earth filled with guilt and violence. Men declare that the law of God has been abrogated, that the Bible is not authentic, and as a result, a tide of evil, such as has seldom been seen since the days of Noah and the days of apostate Israel, is sweeping over the world. Do we live in a world where the belief in God is denied?
That was written when?
1914. 1914.
115 years ago.
Yep. Do we live in an age where God is denied, where the institutions of society declare there is no God? That we evolved from lower life forms, where the leaders of industry are godless? What is the result of rejecting the knowledge of God? It's unavoidable. What's happening? Here's the next words in the quote. Lawlessness, dissipation. Dissipation means the wasting of resources and assets. Wasting of resources. Lawlessness, dissipation, extravagance, and corruption are coming in upon us as an overwhelming flood. Nobility of soul, gentleness, piety are bartered away to gratify the lust for forbidden things. The taking of human life is a matter of daily occurrence. The terrible record of crime daily committed for the sake of gain is enough to chill the blood and fill the soul with horror. Are we seeing this? Every day, just look at what's happening in our society and the world. The time is right upon us when there will be sorrow in the world that no human balm, remedy, no human balm treatment, no human balm can heal. The time is right upon us. We're right about to be on the time. This is 117 years ago. Maybe we're in that time. Are we in that time 117 years later? The time is right upon us where there will be sorrow in the world that no human balm can heal. Are we living in this time? What is the cause of the sorrow? And why can human balm not heal it? The cause is the rejection of the knowledge of God and his design laws, and the embracing of imperialism and righteousness through more governmental control and governmental mandates and the coercion of conscience in order to save lives. This is the cause. Rejecting reality-based assessments and going through Romanism through our governments. And no human medications or treatments or laws and interventions will heal it. Here's the very next words. No human balm can heal. Very next words. The Spirit of God is being withdrawn from the world. Why? This is again reality-based. Where's the dwelling place of the Spirit of God on earth? The Spirit temple. So as billions of human beings are brought into the satanic delusion that either there is no God Or God functions like a Roman dictator, the enforcer of inflicted punishments. Either way, that's Baal worship. That's the false construct worship. Either way, they're hardening their hearts and closing their spirit temple. And when we close our hearts, the spirit temple respects our freedom, and the spirit respects the freedom, and the spirit is withdrawn when billions are hardening. And what is the result? Continuing with the quote, the Spirit of God is being withdrawn from the world. Disasters by sea and land follow one another in quick succession. How frequently we hear of earthquakes and tornadoes, of destruction by fire and flood, with great loss of life and property. We're not hearing anything about that, are we? It's every day. Apparently, these calamities are capricious outbreaks of seemingly disorganized, unregulated forces. But in them, God's purpose may be read. They are one of the means by which he seeks to arouse men and women to a sense of their danger. Why did the calamities come? The first reason, God's using power to cause the calamities, or God's withdrawing his presence, and Satan is getting more and more control and power on the earth, and he is the destroyer, and he's the one that's disrupting. And why does God allow it? He allows it to wake up the sleeping saints, the 10 virgins, wise, 5 foolish, all snoozing, all asleep. And these circumstances are designed to wake people up to the reality in which we live, so that we can shine the light of God's character, his methods, his principles, standing for truth, loving our enemies, praying for those who would persecute us, while leaving other people free, of refusing to bow the knee to the imperial systems of this world, refusing to go along with the imposed law mandates that coerce the conscience of people into the guise of saving lives. We don't go. We don't do it. This is quoting from Scripture in Isaiah. No, quoting the New Testament. As the days of Noah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord comes. The prophecies, continuing on to quote, the prophecies of judgment delivered by Amos and Hosea were tempered with prophecies of future glory. Prophecy of future glory. According to Hosea, the children of Israel were to abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, without an image, and without an ephod, and without a teraphim. Afterward, the prophet continued, shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. God doesn't just warn of coming tragedy. He encourages with the promise of deliverance for the faithful. And when is this prophecy of deliverance to occur? In the latter days. Fear the Lord. Does fear the Lord bring any other Bible text to your mind?
Revelation 14.
There you go. Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour is judgment. This is the same message in the Old Testament right here. And so continue with the quote. Shall the fear of the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. And this author goes on to state, this prophecy is to reach its complete fulfillment in the gathering from all the nations of the people, preparing for the second coming of Christ. The remnant of Israel is symbolized by a woman representing the Lord's chosen church on the earth. It's not about genetics. It's never been about genetics. It's always been about character and faith. Do you have the faith of Abraham to open your heart and receive the indwelling Spirit to be transformed, to have the character of a trustworthy friend? Then you're an heir to Abraham, and a descendant of Abraham, an heir according to the promise. Behold, he says, I allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably to her. This is the prophet speaking to the people. God speaking, I allure her, the church, the bride, and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably. What does this mean, wilderness? Wilderness. The wilderness is away from what? What is the wilderness not? It's not a city. There's a message. Fear God and give glory to Him. The hour of judgment has come. Come out of the wilderness and enter the city of Babylon. No. Come out of Babylon. Come out of the city. Come out of the systems of the world. Come into the wilderness. Come to the garden where the Creator God exists in worship, where nature operates on its design laws. And I will give her vineyards from the tents, and the valley of Achor, and the door of hope, and she shall sing there as in the days of her youth, and as in the days when she came out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be at that day. At what day? What day? At what day? At the time of the second coming. The people, the generation living when He comes. Says the Lord, at that day, at the time of this complete fulfillment of this prophecy, which is the people preparing to meet Jesus. At that day, saith the Lord, you will call me Ishi, my husband, and shall call me no more Bali, my Lord. For I will take away the names of Balaam out of her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. We are the people preparing to call God my husband, meaning the lover of our souls. We will be restored to at one ment. The two shall become one. I pray that they would be one, that you and I are one, that we have this unity, the lover of souls. We have an intimacy with God. We will be united in love and will no longer call God my Lord, meaning my master. We shall be friends and not servants. This means we come back to worship God as Creator and reject the false Balaam, no longer call him Balaam, dictator God of imposed rules, which means, again, we worship Him who made the heavens and the earth. We reject the design law constructs of the human imposed law lie of the kingdoms of this world and all the penal substitutionary theological constructs that are based on it. Continue with the quote. In the last days of Earth's history, again, where are we? The last days of Earth's history, God's covenant with His commandment-keeping people is to be renewed. What is the covenant? The new covenant. I will pay the legal penalty to my Father so He won't have to kill you, and He will declare you to be legally adjusted even though you're still unrighteous and wicked in heart. Is that the covenant? I will write my law where? Heart and mind. The covenant is healing, regeneration, recreation, Christ-likeness of character. In that day I will make a covenant, and I will betroth thee unto me forever. Think the word betroth. I will betroth me unto me forever. I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness, and in judgment, and in loving kindness, and in mercies. I will even betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know the Lord your God. What is life eternal? Jesus said in John 17:3. You might know. We will know the Lord. We'll be united to God in heart and mind. We'll be betrothed. We'll have intimacy. We'll be at one, having His design law of love written in our hearts. Consider what law binds a husband and a wife. Well, it's clearly the law of the state you were married in. Isn't that what binds them together? No, it is not. These legal things that the Supreme Court rules about marriage has no bearing on what binds hearts and minds together. None whatsoever. People can be married by the state and be the worst enemies to each other. The law that binds hearts together, and this is the metaphor God is using. This is a living law. It is a design law. It is a law of reality. It is a law of love and truth and freedom. And God is saying he will heal our hearts, take away our fear, and unite us in love with him. And it is an eternal love with an eternal outcome. It's an eternal relationship. Continuing on with the quote. And it shall come to pass in that day. Notice how many times this author keeps saying that. In what day is this going to come to pass? It's our day, today. We're living in the day. In that day, right now. I will hear, saith the Lord. I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth. And the earth shall hear the corn, and the wine, and the oil. It's a metaphor, folks. Apply the metaphorical reality application. The corn. What is the corn? What is corn made into? Bread. Okay, and it has several different applications here. Remember the metaphor of the little shoot that grows up? Okay. The wave sheaf. Who's the wave sheaf? The corn. Jesus is the Word made flesh. The corn represents Jesus. The living Word, the written Word. Jesus is the corn, he's the bread of life that we are to take, internalize, the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Unless you eat my flesh, drink my blood, you have no part with me. So Jesus is the Word that we internalize, and the Word destroys the lies and wins us to trust. And then, when we're won to trust, we open the heart, and the next thing, where were we here, is the wine. And the wine is symbolic of the blood. And the blood is symbolic of the sinless life of Christ. And so once we're won to trust by the Word that's destroyed the lies and we've opened the heart, he pours his love into our hearts. We have the life of Christ. And then the oil. The oil is the oil of, anoint your head with oil. It's the oil of the Holy Spirit, which develops us and transforms us and renews us and empowers us. And they shall hear Jezreel, and I will sow her unto me in the earth. And I will have mercy upon her. It's talking about the church still. Sow her in the earth. God is sowing a people in the earth. And I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which are not my people, thou art my people. And they shall say, thou art my God. What is described? The application of the righteousness of Christ into any willing human heart. And brings us back into unity with Christ. Continuing on with the quote. In that day. What day? I mean, you're getting an emphasis here. Just prior to the second coming of Christ. In that day, the remnant of Israel, and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob, shall stay upon the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. From every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, there will be those who will gladly respond to the message, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. What will happen in this people who are called the remnant? Who are reconciled to God, who have the covenant relationship, who call God my husband rather than my master, who have their hearts united. What happens in this people? God's law, that has God's law restored in them. Notice the next words. This is what happens. They will turn from every idol that binds them to this earth and will worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of water. This is what they will do. They reject the imposed law lies. They don't worship a God who's like Baal. They don't worship a punishing dictator who's the source of inflicted pain and suffering. They worship the Creator who is revealed in Jesus Christ. And by worshiping him and beholding him, they become like him. Continue with the quote. They will free themselves from every entanglement and will stand before the world as monuments of God's mercy. Monuments. That will be monumental. But we will stand as monuments. We are God's evidence. We are God's witnesses. We're his lights. We're his revelation. We're the living monuments of the living law of God. The law of God cannot be understood written on stone. It can only be truly seen in living beings who live the law. And we are his monuments at this time in history to live the law. And God will look at the universe and say, look, just like he did with his friend Job, my friends, they're perfect and righteous in all their ways. This is what he's looking for, to see himself in his people. And then closing, obedient to every divine requirement They will be recognized by angels and by men as those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. This is our privilege, to receive Christ, to be reconciled to God, to have our hearts united with Him, to have His law written in our heart, to have fear and selfishness purged, to have our spirit temples cleansed, to be lights in the darkness, to love our enemies and pray for those who abuse us and reject the imposed laws of this world, to say no to the human justice system, and to live in harmony with our Creator God. This is what we're called for. And do you see the incredible pressures being placed upon us by the systems of this world? So what was God's goal for Israel? What did He want them to accomplish beyond simply being the bloodline through whom Jesus would come? That was part of it, but it was more than that. Didn't He want to reveal His principles, His design laws for life lived out in the people there? Didn't He want them to be that light? What is God wanting from His people today? From this generation on earth today? What's He wanting from us? Isn't it the same? To have a people so surrendered to Him that His law is the principles upon which they live and abide, that they reveal Him in the way they treat other people. And so Revelation 12:17. Then the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, or the remnant, who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. Does obeying God's commandments mean having the right list of rules and behavioral conformity? That's not what it means. Yes, our behavior will be in harmony with God's law, but we can conform behavior externally without having a renewed heart. It's not about that. It's having the law written on the heart and then holding to the testimony of Jesus. Does holding to the testimony of Jesus mean belonging to an organization that possesses the writings of dead prophets? If we have membership in an organization and that organization have writings from inspired prophets of God, does that mean we're part of the remnant or holding to the testimony of Jesus? Some teach that. It's not what it means. Remember, the Jews who crucified Christ had the writings of dead prophets. It means holding to the same testimony about God and revealing and teaching that same testimony, the testimony that Jesus gave. And what testimony did Jesus give? If you've seen me, you've seen. This is those who hold to the text. God is not like the imperial dictator. God so loved the world that He required a blood payment of an innocent sacrifice not to kill you. No, that He sent His Son, that whosoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. The Son was not sent to condemn the world, but to save the world. God was in the Son, reconciling the world to Himself. See, the testimony of Jesus is God is exactly the opposite of what Satan says. His law is exactly the opposite of what Satan says. And it's pretty much the opposite of what most of Christianity teaches. And this is the purpose of God's people on earth today. The true remnant of God are to live in harmony with His design laws, to reveal His character on the earth, and to give the testimony that Jesus gave about His Father. Call people back to Creator worship and out of this system of imperial Romanism. And this is the second angel's message. The first angel's message is the eternal good news. God is not like that. The second angel's message is to leave the imperial system of Romanism, that system of imposed legal rules, the Babylonian system, and come back to worship. Get out of that system. Get your minds and hearts out of it. Monday's lesson